so I can see more people. I can see a cat. That's Barbara's cat there. Excellent. I can see Faye and Liz. I can see Maxine and hello. And I can, if you want to put your cameras on, that would be great. Good morning, Jean. Helen is about to connect, and Beth and Bridget. I can see Faye's knees. I can't actually see Faye, but hello, Faye. I can see Sass in a very sunny kitchen by the looks of things. We're just waiting for more people to connect. I can see Bridget. Wonderful to see everybody's background and everybody's living spaces. Sometimes they're ceilings, depending on how their cameras are set up. Barbara, you've got a lovely cat there. I can see Patrick is about to join us. I'm giving a commentary because you're all on mute and we're waiting for other people. So, yeah, that's the reason. Hello, Jill. Hello, Melanie. How long do we give it, Jess, when we assume people have arrived? We're giving it?
We normally wait till about 5 past.
Okay, so you've still got time to get all your drawing materials together. Right, we're waiting. Let's do a little bit of. Can we see this? Can we see this camera? Can everybody see my Len Grant? I was going to show you what's in my in terms of drawing materials. I think we said on the blurb, all you need is a biro. But of course, you know, if like me, you are a bit obsessive about pens, who can't go past a Ryman stationery without popping in and getting 3 pens that you've already got? So these are the sort of pens that I was also recommending, these fine liner pens. But you can see these green ones that I've got, which I'll talk to you about later. And also fascinating for urban sketches are these sort of things, which again, I'll talk about later. I'm just kind of filling the time. It's a bit like, I don't know, when the football match doesn't start on time. Talk rubbish. So these are fascinating for urban sketches. These are called water brushes, and they literally have water inside them. And it means that you don't have to carry around a pot of water with you, and you can get them at different sizes. I've got a couple of those. Yeah. So there we are. How many people have we got now?
We've got a few. No one seems to be in the waiting room, so we'll just give it a couple more minutes and then I think we can begin.
Okay, cool. Unless you're in your pajamas, can I invite you all to put on your cameras? It's nice to see everybody. And it feels like I'm not talking into a black hole. Even if you are in your pajamas, you can put the camera on, I guess. So everybody's come in, Jess, who was waiting. No,
yeah.
Stragglers.
Yep, so we're ready to begin?
Yeah, you kick off.
Right, so good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many people here this morning and ready to sketch, and lovely cats and all sorts, so that's fantastic. So, of course, we're joined by the lovely Len Grant this morning, who's from Manchester, a great artist. and we're just going to get on with some sketching. As I said in the chat, we are recording this session because we're going to put it on the YouTube channel. But if anyone is uncomfortable with that, just pop that in the chat and we'll end the recording because we want everyone to feel comfortable in the session. We're thinking of having a comfort break in the middle because it is a bit of a longer session. But I'll hand over to Len now. And if anyone has any questions as well, just pop anything in the chat that they fancy.
Okay, yeah, just to make it a bit easier, we have put everybody on mute. But I do welcome questions as we go through. So if you want to unmute yourselves for that, and if I remember, I'll have or Jess, if you can remind me to have a kind of formal question session at some point. But if there are questions along the way, very informal this morning, let's just have a bit of fun. So from my point of view, I've no idea who you all are. I'm Len Grant. I'm sitting in my loft in Withington in Manchester. So just to have a bit of an idea of who you are, how many of you live in Greater Manchester? Just put your hands up. So pretty much everybody. Yeah, good. And how many of you could I say, Bridget, thank you for that. You're doing that electronically, and Barbara too. And how many of you would say you haven't done any drawing since, say, you were at school, or very little? So few absolute beginners. And I guess, anyone done any urban sketching before? And this is just a refresher? No? Oh yeah, hi Jean, hi. Okay, so I'll kick off by sharing my screen. This is when things all go a bit. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you. And what you should get is this slide here. Jess, just give me a thumbs up if that's working all right. Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you very much. Oh, I need my keyboard for this, of course. So just to give you a very short background about myself, I became a photographer, freelance photographer 30 years ago, actually, and have photographed much of the regeneration in Manchester and Salford over the last 3 decades. In about 7 years ago, I took up sketching because there was an urban sketching group in Manchester, and I took it up as a hobby and was pretty rubbish at it. And after a couple of years of getting a little bit better, somebody suggested that I offer sketching to my photography clients as an alternative. And to cut a long story short, over that period between then and now, the photography has reduced, and I am pretty much now a full-time. I can't call myself an illustrator because that's too frightening. I call myself a sketcher. So now I used to be a photographer and writer, and now I call myself a sketcher, writer, and photographer. And I do very little photography, and earn most of my money now from drawing, which I continue to do as a hobby as well. So I am passionate about urban sketching, and I want to share that passion, I guess, with you guys this morning. So what is urban sketching? There is actually, urban sketching is a term which talks about a particular type of creativity, I guess. And it was actually created by this guy in Seattle over 10 years ago now. And it's essentially for people. He identified there were lots of people around the world who love just sitting in parks, on streets, and drawing their environment. And he devised first what was that? It wasn't Instagram, because that wasn't happening at that time. He started that online and invited other people to join him, and urban sketching was born. So, and now there's a huge international community of urban sketchers. And if you look at urbansketching.org, I think it is, you will find there are groups in hundreds of cities. We've got a very active group in Manchester. and I can tell you about that later if you wish. So why do I like urban sketching? For me, it's like keeping a visual diary. People may have heard of journaling, which is similar sort of thing, I guess. It's absolutely accessible in that all you need is a sketchbook, a few pens, and maybe some colour, and you can literally do it anywhere. And I love getting to a railway station and finding that the train is delayed, or when we could fly, the airline, you're waiting 2 hours, because I would just sit and draw. Just do it absolutely everywhere and all the time. Oh, and there's the website address. How exciting. So these are some of my early urban sketches. So I'll spend about 10 minutes talking about these, and then we'll get on to some practical stuff. And I, as you will see, like to use urban sketching as a way of telling stories. So quite often I add writing and other elements to my sketches. This is a little story about what happened to me as I was drawing on holiday in France. This is in Rome, and literally sitting on oh, that's you, Patrick. Would you want?
Excuse me.
Yeah, it's all right. Just put yourself on mute, and then you can sneeze away.
Oh, sorry, I thought I...
No problem. No problem. And this, so from Rome to Liverpool, I forget the name of this pub in Liverpool, but this is a really good example of what the difference is between drawing and sketching. I can't draw. I cannot draw. I could not draw a likeness of you if you were sat in front of me. I could use you to inspire a picture, a sketch that might have some resemblance, but would just be an inspiration. And here, if you look at the elements in this picture of a pub, none of it is accurate, but you absolutely know the type of pub that you're in. And, you kind of get a feel for that place and time. And you get an idea that I'm there too, because there's my hand and my sketchbook. This was, my partner and I were in Istanbul for the first time last March. Look at the date there, the 12th of March, just before everything kicked off last year. Probably that was our last trip away. I draw on holiday a lot. I draw going on holiday. I used to draw on the bus, only because I cycle most places now. And I listen to bits of conversation, and sometimes that goes into. And urban sketching over the years has become a bit like a bit manic for me. Not manic, but a compulsion. So sometimes I feel that I am literally driving along, or I might be going from meeting to meeting, and I've got my sketching stuff with me, and I've got half an hour to spare, and I will literally pull up in a car park. And I think this was, when was this? This was, 18th of January, it says, 2017. I remember it being a cold day, didn't want to get out of the car. And this was 2 days later, the 20th of January. Happy to say I didn't actually indulge in a McDonald's. I just drew the outside of it. Our urban sketching group goes off to different locations. We went to the Etihad one session, and rather than drawing the stadium itself, I stepped back. I wanted to kind of tell the story of the stadium in its location. And I got into conversation with the guy whose house I was sat outside. He actually brought me a cup of tea, and I photographed him with my sketch. And then I wrote about that experience on the actual sketch later on. So that's what I think about when I'm sketching. What's the story? What am I trying to say? And sometimes I'll go into town, I'll see some activity happening, and I'll draw that activity. In this case, it was a protest. Just people coming in and out of Victoria Station. Is this wet? Asked one of the lads, putting his thumb on my wet yellow ochre. Are you an architect? Asked his mate. And those little asides just kind of, for me, make the sketch. I did a series of sketches in Barber's shop. This is in a pub in West London, a cafe in Liverpool. Look at the different ways that you can change the sketch from the materials you're using. So here it's fountain pen, black marker, a bit of yellow watercolor, and here it's absolutely everything. You know, it's pencil crayons, it's paint, and different coloured inks as well. Quite a variety there. This is, again, another urban sketching expedition where we went to Chinatown, and most people drew a Chinese restaurant or the Chinese Arch. And I just kind of liked the cacophony of the backs of these pubs and places on Portland Street, or the back of Portland Street. In Liverpool, this one is, again, fountain pen, a different coloured fountain pen for the background, or a different coloured pen just to set it apart. And a bit of that storytelling idea. So this is the Daniel Addison steamship. Do you want to go on it, Dad? And you've just got this idea of what's going on, which complements it. The urban sketchers have an international symposium where literally hundreds of urban sketchers descend on a city, or used to, every year. And we had it in Manchester in 2016. And this was the opening address. So with the urban sketchers, I've been to Chicago, I've been to Porto in Portugal, we've been to Amsterdam, been all over drawing with like-minded people across the world. One of my early sketches of a windy, rainy Manchester, that was probably in the first year I was drawing. And I like to think that I've probably progressed a little bit as we've gone on holiday. Our teenage son with food poisoning in bed. He didn't thank me for that one. So today, that's kind of what I feel about urban sketching. Jess, I wondered whether you could just put this camera on the desktop camera as the main one for now.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show you a book that I did in 2018 called The Rusholme Sketcher. And I would spend a lot of time in Rusholme on weekends and evenings. And I'm sorry, we did try the camera the other way around, but it didn't kind of work. So it's a portrait format, and I'm showing you a landscape book. So I'll try and move it around a little bit. So I've made my own book about this particular place, which includes writing conversations I had with different people. That's an interesting one. That was the pub when the might have been the Euros or the World Cup was on. So I use sketching to kind of express a sense of place, I guess. So that came out in 2018. The books that really inspired me to start with was this, which is the guy who, if you like, invented urban sketching. Gabriele Campagnaro, apologies to him for pronouncing that wrong, but The Art of Urban Sketching. So this is the kind of Bible of urban sketching, and he literally invited people from all over the world to contribute in so many different styles to this wonderful book. So if you are thinking of, you are bitten today by what I can pass on to you, then The Art of Urban Sketching is certainly one of my recommendations. All sorts of different styles, some of which, you know, you'd be inspired by, some of which just overawed, by, to be quite honest. And while we're on books, I want to tell you about this one as well. It's called The Creative License by Danny Gregory. It's an American book, and if you can get past the Americanism of it, this one is literally the one that inspired me to draw. And it literally gives you a license. He works through this idea of why people feel they can't draw, why they feel they can't be creative, and says, yes, you can do it. You're allowed. No one's going to tell you not to. So those two books were very, very influential to me in the beginning. So if we go back to the share screen, today what we're going to do is sketch in blocks. We do three things. There are lots of ways of teaching people how to urban sketch. I'm going to show you one of them, and I call it sketching in blocks. And then we're going to maybe attempt to draw some people, and then we're going to add some tone. So go beyond just the line that we've drawn and add something else and see what effect that has. And then we're going to try and put it all together. So I would normally do this out and about with you all, but we're going to do it on the screen. And I've done this before, so it does work. So sketching blocks, what do I mean about that? This is a picture of Manchester Cathedral, and you can see what I've used here is pens of different thicknesses. And if you look at particularly the thicker lines, which kind of outline the buildings in blocks. So there's not much detail in this. But there are, if you analyze it, it is actually broken down into different shapes, shapes of trees and shapes of buildings. And then the smaller, thinner lines add more detail later. So that's this sort of thing we're going to do. And this is a picture I forget where we were here, which looks very complicated. But again, if you look at it for a few seconds, you can see that actually it's a series of shapes for sides of buildings, shapes for roofs, etc. And then bits of detail later on with colour and thinner lines. So this is the building in the northern quarter that we're going to attempt to draw today. And first I'm going to show you how I do it. And then using those techniques that I've demonstrated, you're going to get to draw some images which I'll show you. So this is the most important slide I think I'm showing you today. These four things are what you should, if you're going to write anything down today, I would write these things down. What you have to do for any sort of drawing, any sort of art, is first to look. I remember one urban sketcher teacher saying to me, you should sit on your stool and you should look at your urban scene for at least 10 minutes before you make one mark, which is good advice, but you don't often have that time and luxury to do that. And the next thing is measuring. And when I talk about measuring, quite often the archetypal you can imagine, you see an artist, they get a pen and they stretch their pen out and they kind of measure the particular thing that they're drawing based on the measurements of their pen. Now, if we were doing this live, I'd show you how to do that. But I want to just say that rather than measuring today, I just want you to consider the relationship between one building and another. And that, I'll come to that in the next slide, because I can't really demonstrate, well, I could demonstrate measuring, I suppose. Jess, could we put me back onto me just for a second?
Yeah.
So what artists do, and don't get too worked up about this because I'm not expecting everyone to do this straight off, is when they're looking at a particular building or a scene, they stretch their arm out, they take a pen or a paintbrush, and they kind of close one eye and they say, right, well, that particular building, it takes up half my pen, and this particular building takes up the full pen, and the relationship between the two. It's that what I want you to think about today, and it'll become clear in the next few slides. It's the relationship between one thing and another, which I want you to start to understand and recognize when you're looking at buildings. If you are doing this measuring thing outside, and you look a bit of an idiot if you're doing it, do remember that you have to keep your arms straight. It doesn't work if actually you're kind of doing this sort of thing, because the relationship changes. Okay, so back to the slides. And I think everybody understands what negative space is. It's the space between things, and that will become clear in 1 or 2 slides time. So let's go back to this. Why is that not moving? Could you put me back on to, have you got me back on my slides, Jess?
I can see slides and then also you talking. I don't know about everyone else.
All right, okay. Well, I don't see that. I see something different. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just trying to move my, advance my screen on, and it's not doing it. Hang on a second.
Okay. I think if you stop sharing and reshare, that might work as well.
Okay. Ah, what joy! My mouse doesn't even work now.
Oh.
Hang on a second. Escape. It's all going horribly wrong.
I've got the slides as well if you want me to share.
Yeah, well, let me just try and sort this out. Ah, there we are. How did that happen? Did you do that or did I do that?
You did that.
Yeah. Okay. So this is our subject, and these are the first few lines that I might draw. So I consider the building to, in this case, be initially the ground floor and the upper floors. And what I mean about measuring and what I mean about the relationship between one thing and another is looking at the building long enough to work out that how much of the, how deep the upper 2 floors are in relation to the ground floor, which in this case is probably, as you might imagine, 1/3 on the ground floor and 2/3 on the upper floors. So those are the first lines that I might draw. And then I start adding some more blocks in, which are the adjoining buildings, paying particular attention to the relationship between those buildings and the ones we've drawn. So for instance, on the right-hand side, see those 3 skylight windows? You might look at that and think, actually, those are halfway down the main building that we're drawing. And it's that sort of relationship that I'm talking about. And then the building behind it, the one with all the windows, where does that start? Where does those lines come in relation to the building that you've already drawn? So really now you've only drawn a few blocks, but what you're getting is a grounding, is the base of the if you get this right, everything else falls into place. I could go on about right and wrong and perspective. Actually, I don't worry about getting things too right, but yeah. This is negative space. It's the space around the things you're drawing. So for instance, the space on the right-hand side between one building and another, that's important. And so I've added now some lines which take in the foreground, the car and the lamppost, which will give the drawing some depth. And this is all I've drawn so far on my page. And in this case, with a thick marker, and not too worried about whether the lines are straight or wonky. And adding in one or two details of doorways. And I literally have not drawn any windows yet. Biggest advice, don't get hung up on windows. You don't have to draw everything. Some urban sketches spend hours and hours on windows. It's not, there's very few. Look at this, you know, there are some windows here. But you get the idea between this and this. You can see where, you can see how the drawing is progressing. So I'm now going to start off a little pre-recorded video, which gives you a demo, and I'll talk over it. And I'm using in this case, this Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pen. And the reason I use that is because it's a big, thick pen and it doesn't actually bleed through the paper onto the other side. I'm going to drink my tea while we're talking. So that's the first line. It's the one on the left of the building, and you'll see that showing up there. And I just start to do the outline with my thick pen, and I'm doing one block. And the first block is literally the outline of the building. And then I'm working, that's interesting, that mark there that I've made, I've worked out the relationship between how far that goes up the height of the building. And that's what I mean about the relationship between one thing and another. So there I've drawn another block, which is the ground floor. And I'm adding in the little bits of things on the top. That's the building on the side. I have speeded this up, by the way, so don't think, oh, wow, he's amazing, isn't he? It is actually speeded up a little bit. And here I'm looking again at negative space. So at this point here, before I draw that line of that building in the background, I've worked out how much space there is, how much negative space there is, and then I draw that line there. I'm drawing a tree because it's City of Trees. And again, it's those relationships here. So if you look about where that building hits this building, there and there, what have I drawn? I think I've drawn that line and that line so far. And where that line cuts into there, it's below it, can you see? So that's what I mean about relationships. And again, so that's all I've drawn so far. And then I speed myself up, adding in those foreground elements. Hate drawing cars, but you don't need much. You don't need much to give people the idea of what you're actually drawing. That's why it's a sketch and not a drawing. So again, I haven't drawn any windows yet, and I'm still using that big, thick pen. Beginning to add some outlines of windows now. when you use a thicker pen, it means you can't draw lots of detail and you can't get hung up on it. So I do recommend a thicker pen rather than a thinner pen, or indeed a combination as I'm doing here. So now I'm beginning to add more detail in with a smaller pen, but not getting hung up. Let me just freeze it here and just show you. So I've drawn this window here, and look how many windows I've got on the sketch. 1, 2, 3, 4 on that side. There is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I hadn't told you that, you would not have known, but you would not have compared. I get something wrong here. That's interesting. I kind of cover it up a little bit with pens. And whenever you draw a line which you think is wrong, you just draw another one next to it. That's the urban sketching way. And generally, we don't start with a pencil. We just go straight in with pens. Always good to have a figure in there to get some sort of scale. And this is, whoops, no sugar. Let's go back. This is, it was about here, wasn't it? Oh no. Sorry. I think I was nearly at the end of that. But what the point I wanted to make was, I've forgotten the point I was wanting to make. Okay, I am going to invite you to now take some pens and paper, and I'm going to give you 3 views, and I want you to make some outline sketches of each of them in blocks with no detail. But before we do that, Jess, could you put everybody, or can I invite anybody who's got any questions now, just to unmute themselves and ask away?
Hi, Len. It's Patrick. Can you hear me?
I can indeed, Patrick. Good morning.
Good morning. Just wondering, what size paper are we going to draw on?
Well, you can draw on anything at all. I spent much of my early sketching days drawing in sketchbooks, which were A5, this sort of size. Now I'm drawing more on A4. But really, whatever you've got, I would say A5 is a minimum, A4 is ideal. But certainly as a sketcher, I would recommend not only varying the materials you're using to give yourself experience and variety, but also varying the format. So one day draw small, one day draw big.
Yeah. I'm going to do A4 today. Is that okay?
That would be lovely. Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Be nice to hear from people. Is it going okay? Does everybody understand it? Yeah. I've got some thumbs there.
Yes, it's fine. It's just that my connection's not very good, and I don't get the other screen when Jess changes it over. I get stuck on.
So which screen don't you get? Do you not get the slides, Barbara?
I get the slides, but I don't get when you show your sketchbook and your pen.
Okay. Do you get me, which is most important?
I've got you in a little,
All right. Well, in that case, I will remember. In fact, I'll just spend a few seconds showing you this, which is the Bible I was talking to you about, The Art of Urban Sketching.
Thank you.
And the other one I mentioned was this one by Danny Gregory called The Creative License. And if you look up Danny Gregory, he runs to something called the Sketchbook School. He's one of the sketchbook gurus, but this was one of his early books. And he does blogs and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, but that's the one that got me going. Okay, Jess, interestingly, nowhere on my screen, and because I've got my phone in front of me here, can I see what time it is? Can you give me a time check?
It's 10:40.
Right, okay, cool. Thank you. So then what I want you to do now, I'm going to give you 3 views, and I'm going to only give you a few minutes for each one. And I just want you literally to think in blocks and think in the relationships of them. So you'll all recognize, most of you I'm sure will recognize this as the Lowry in Salford. And so what I'm interested in here is the relationships between the shapes. So yes, you draw this right-hand shape, but it's the background shapes and where they cut into the right-hand shape, which is of interest. So yeah, a few minutes, don't do any detail, just do the outline shape of that. Is everyone happy with the materials they've got? They've all got something to draw with and something to draw on. Could you time a couple of minutes for me, Jess? Give you something to do there. Give you...
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, tell us when it's up. Oh, maybe I should do it as well. That would be good. Have I got it in paper? Sounds like I can hear somebody's toilet going off there. Somebody's washing machine. Somebody's got the washing machine on, I think. Which is absolutely fine. Okay, how are we doing? Right, I've done it now, so everybody else should have done it as well. So can we go to, Jess, can we go to gallery, or I'd like to see, in fact, I can go to gallery. I think that's what I need to do.
Right, yeah, I'll unpin. How's that now?
Do you know, for some reason, I was going to say I kind of lost the my ability to use the mouse, but I've now got that back after I've stopped the sharing. So would anybody be brave enough to hold up their, Barbara, I can see something there. Excellent. Excellent. Jess has done one. Yeah, some nice big bold lines there. You know, you're all urban sketches within 45 minutes. That's amazing. I've done my job. We can finish now. That's great. So did you, anybody want to give some feedback about how they found that? Was that challenging? Maxine, you're not on mute, so I'm going to ask you, how did you find that, Maxine?
Oh, sorry, I had a disconnection. You know, you showed the picture that it disconnected. It took time to get back on again, so it must have brought it back because I had to reconnect. But yeah, it's knowing what to pick first. It's your problem where to make your first lines, your relationship. So I did end up doing 3 sketches because it's what I was trying to go and pick first.
Yeah.
The main subject. So I started on the dish, but the dish is a funny shape, isn't it?
Interesting shape, yeah.
Interesting shape to start off with. So that's been, yeah.
And Naomi, how about you? Let me see yours again. You've got a nice thick pen going on there. It's that relationship, isn't it? I mean, you are on mute, so you could unmute yourself so you could That's
yeah.
better. Yeah, it's that. What's interesting is how that diagonal cuts into that upright as well, and those other two shapes. And I think you've got it bang on there, and how the shapes underneath work. And once you've got that structure, everything else is really quite easy, because it's just then detail. If you can get that more or less right, then that's it. So let's try another one. I'm going to go to this one. Can you all see that one, or do we need to get? Jess, you'll just have to advise me whether that's all right, because I obviously see things differently. So this is the Imperial War Museum North. Let's have a minute or two doing that one, and I will do it too, just so that I know how much time it should take you. So that line goes up halfway through. I should say, because we're actually doing it on 2D things from photographs, it is that much easier than doing it when you're actually out in the field, so to speak. But one of the techniques that you can use in that respect is when you're doing your looking, is literally to close one eye and try and see things more in 2D. And a little bit of a shape here. Okay, I've done mine, so give you another 30 seconds because you're all absolute beginners. That's if you can see my second camera, that's my attempt. Okay, who would like to share? Come on, somebody who hasn't. We'll put all your pictures up in front of your cameras to start with. Terrific. See, this was an easy one. This was far too easy. Excellent. Yeah, you've cracked it. You've all cracked it. I've got two Barbaras. Thank you, Barbara and Barbara. Yeah, that's great. So this is drawing in blocks. Let's try this one, a little bit more complicated. Another cultural venue, the Bridgewater Hall, which I actually photographed being built in about 1992, I think, 91, 92. Again, blocks, no detail. Think about the relationship of one block to the next block. And isn't it easy? It's so easy. What I would say about sketching as opposed to drawing is that you don't have to draw everything. You give the viewer some clues. So, for instance, if you were drawing a building full of windows, you could draw one or two windows, or even some lines that represented where the other windows should be. And the viewer adds stuff into it. It's a bit like the drawing of the inside of the pub. A few lines intimate the style of architecture, and because the viewer has some history about what that sort of architecture is like, they add things themselves through their viewing of it. And that's the joy of sketching. You don't have to draw everything. This is very different from being outside with you all, and you're all sitting on stools and me walking around. But maybe we'll do that next time. In fact, while you're drawing, I shall give an advert for the Manchester Urban Sketches Facebook group, and after a long delay, for obviously reasons, we're now out sketching together. And if you check out the Manchester Urban Sketchbook group, there are some sessions coming up. I think there might be one next Saturday, actually. But I'm hosting one on the 10th of July in the Northern Quarter /Ancoats, where I thought I'd start it with a little bit of an introduction for those who hadn't sketched before, just for 5 or 10 minutes. So if you are bitten after this session, that's the thing to go to. So it looks like everybody might have finished there. So, and I'm loving how you're all brave enough to show your pictures. So let's have a look at what you've done. That's nice, Melanie. Yeah. Maxine, yeah. Yeah, Faye, that's lovely, Faye. Yeah. Oh, you've done it before, Naomi. I'm convinced. Barbara, just hold yours up a bit more. Sorry, the other Barbara, that's it. Barbara Williams. Yeah, great. Let me just talk about Faye's. Faye, just hold yours there. You see, what you've got there absolutely is the proportions. What this is about is getting the proportions right, and getting the basis of your sketch. So what you might do, or what you all might do, continuing from there, is might add in those that row of bollards. And if you make the bollards on the left slightly bigger than the bollards on the right, again, you're adding that idea of depth. And you were to put the stone in. And I love drawing street furniture. I love drawing signposts. Thanks, Faye. I love drawing lampposts, and I love drawing litter bins, and I love drawing all that sort of what people would call mess on the street. But for me, it adds depth, and it adds character to your drawings. Great. Any questions at this point? From my seat? Yes.
Hi, Len, it's Barbara Williams. Can I just ask, so, it is about the proportion thing, the apex of the roof of the glass centerpiece. When I'm looking at it in my head, I'm logically thinking they're the same size, and it's really hard to sew the wooden bit on the top. Is it? Is that the angle of it? Would though, or
which?
So in the centre, the apex, what looks like the wooden apex of the roof.
It's actually an aluminium one, but yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, well, there you see. There you go. That's.
I was there when they built it. Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see it now. Now you say it. I can see the underside of it. But anyway, it was about the proportion thing and the way you look at it.
Yeah.
So instinctively, I wanted to draw that as equal lengths on both sides, and it was impossible for me to see it any other way. But is it different?
Well, if as the photographer taking the picture, which I think was me, if you're standing directly in front of it, yes, that would be the case. If you were standing from slightly one side, then you would the side that was closest to you would be longer than the side that's on the other side.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's just sorry.
Say again.
But it's just instinctive that I want to, I want to draw what I think it should be rather than what I'm seeing.
Yes, that's what we all fall foul of when we're drawing. It's a bit like this. If I'm and the other Barbara, I'll show you this. I'm going to draw something on my table, but I'll show you it. I'll hold it up in a minute. So if we're drawing a cup and saucer, we have this kind of vision of a cup and saucer, which is kind of like this. That's kind of like the mind's eye of a cup and saucer, whereas it's never ever like that at all. I'm going to draw something which is very similar. The handle kind of goes a bit like this, and actually it's I haven't drawn that particularly well. Anyway, Sorry, Barbara, I'll show you my
Yeah.
bad interpretation. But yes, what happens is we have particular icons in our minds about what something should look like, what a bicycle should look like, what a house should look like, and quite often like a childlike, representation of a building. And that's why looking is so important. And I would recommend, and when I started urban sketching, when I was driving and I was stopping at traffic lights, and I had just had a minute or two, I'd look at a building opposite, and I'd work out the angles, and I'd work out the relationship between things. And if you can train yourself to start seeing things, even if you're not drawing them, start seeing things in a different way, as if you were about to draw them, it's quite enlightening, really. Think, oh yes, actually it's that shape and that shape.
Yeah.
One very quick tip in terms of while we're on that building, and I'll just demonstrate this pen for you, which is called a sailor pen. Sailor as in somebody who goes on the sea. And it's a Japanese calligraphy pen, and they call them Fude pens, F-U-D-E, because they have a bent nib. And the joy of this pen, and the reason I've got lots of them, is that when you hold it in one way, you can get a thick line, and you hold it in a different way, and you get a thin line with the same, with the very same pen. So I kind of quite like those pens. So yeah, if you're a little tip, if you were drawing this apex here and you're thinking about the angle of it, so you've got that point, literally the apex. Imagine it as a clock face, and imagine you've got 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and then you look at the particular angles of the apex going down, and you think to yourself, okay, well, if that's the center of the clock, what angle is the right hand angle going down? It's not 3 o'clock and it's not 6 o'clock. It's about between 4 and 5 o'clock. And you can kind of draw a line. And similarly on the other side, because we're looking at it equally. So you kind of end up with something like that when you think of angles of buildings as a clock face. I'll hold that up for you, Barbara. Sorry, you're seeing the other side of my drawing. But seeing a particular angle as a particular junction at a building as a clock face, and thinking, well, how does that line go down? I mean, we could talk all about perspective and things like that. That's an easy way of thinking about perspective, is just think of it as a clock face and what angle it's actually going at. Okay.
Thank you.
Great, we're doing well. I like to talk a little bit about drawing people, which is a bit scary, I think, for absolute beginners, because drawing people is very difficult, and lots of people avoid it. Lots of urban sketchers will draw the city without any people in it. And for me, that doesn't kind of work. You know, a city, an urban environment, absolutely is populated with people. And so over the years, I've tried to draw people, and people are my nemesis, I have to say. I always find it very difficult to draw them. But I have persevered, and I've kind of got to a point where I kind of draw them in a particular style. I'll show you what I was doing last week in a minute. But this is the box office at home in Manchester, which would be totally inappropriate if they didn't have people in it. But look at those figures. Again, there's very little detail. You know, there's no features in the faces, but you get the idea of the hustle and bustle. There's even a little child there as well.